everybody. It's Carrying Stones, Digging Holes, and haven't done a video in several weeks. And Ken Doss, but oh yeah, those are nasturtiums. Now that I can see them, yeah, their flowers are totally edible. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
could see them in the background. I kept asking, "Are those nasturtiums? Or are those
Well,
edible?" Yeah, those flowers are edible. You can eat them on flowers or whatever you want to stir fry. But yeah, nasturtium is a great plant to have. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of talk about, like I just kind of wanted to start a conversation with perspective because, Par from Sweden, we've had kind of conversations about, I've introduced him to some of the people that I know, and he's been, looking at a lot of their information, and has had other people that he's been looking into their information, different sides of law, different types of law. There's so many out there. It's mind-boggling actually. So it doesn't matter whether you're, doing, what kind of law that you're going to be doing. But the first thing that I found that's really important, and this goes back to, I've been whistleblowing for 30 years. I'm involved with people. You know, I didn't really get on the bandwagon with common law or other types of law till 2009 when the state decided to put, 3,000 people out of work in the state of Nevada. Nevada is the only state that has kind of a law that is a holistic alternative medicine law, and it's based on frontier medicine going back to 1919. So we are like the alternative medicine state. So we had like a full attack by our legislative councils, and they were going to get rid of anything alternative in the state, including supplements. Vitamin C would have been a level 1 felony. And they were trying to arrest us alternative practitioners a year before the bill even went into the floor of our legislators, and put people out of business, arresting them, giving them fake cease and desist orders. And so a lot of people lost their homes. There was a lot of foreclosure. It was during the time period of, the 2008, 2009 crash, the financial crash in the United States and the housing market crash. So people were barely holding on as it was. So it was a pretty intense. It would have shut down. This bill would have shut down 1,500 supplement stores, right? Health food stores in the state of Nevada. So the only way I ended up defeating the bill, but I got the federal supplement lobbyists to actually help me, because the only way that I could get it defeated was that I knew all kinds of people who owned health food stores and also practitioners that gave herbal medicines to people, and they wrote, the federal supplement industry lobbyists, they wrote us a addendum that we wanted into the bill. So I got 30 people that sold supplements and everything else to come to the legislature to fight to at least have the addendum put into the bill. And this is how we got it defeated. I single-handedly defeated this thing, and it was a monster. Anyway, it's a long story about that whole legislative process for that 6 months. Almost killed me. I fought against 50 bills. There were only 8 of us that were fighting. I worked alongside with 7 other of the most amazing legal minds in common law, natural law, against 890 paid lobbyists and legislative, like a huge amount of legislative counsel. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it was a pretty intense period, but I had to get off the fence because in 2009, I started getting attacked because I was asking questions, and then eventually I found this bill that they were going to try to pass. But I had police, basically harassing me. I was being profiled. Right. I had law enforcement camping out in front of my house. Every time I would leave in the car, they would pull me over. They were constantly just, messing with my mind. Lots of phone calls, lots of terrorism, like all kinds of just crazy stuff. So my livelihood, years and years and years of education, 20 years of education from, a college to CEUs to apprenticeships where, like I had to move and go study with people, and all of this other stuff, huge amounts of money that I paid to do the work that I do as a traditional osteopath, specialize in nutrition, herbal medicine, all the different things I do, biodynamics, deal with, the environment and the land, nutrient density, was under threat because now I'm not going to be able to do any of that kind of work. So that's kind of like when a common law group here in the Reno area kind of took me under their wing and started to help me. Now, I kind of knew about different types of law before that, but this is when I had to get off the fence because we were extremely worried that they would incarcerate me for no reason because I was getting ready to fight them, right? I was getting ready to stomp on them. So I just kind of want to talk to people about, usually people get involved with alternative types of legal stuff when they've been locked in to a corner. And what happens is we're more like wild animals at that point because we're losing everything and we're terrified and we're like really in big fear. And this is not a really good way to approach taking on a different type of law, whether you're going to copyright your name and that stuff, or you're going to do common law copyright, or you're going to do some common law, paperwork, or you're going to do syntax law, you're going to do all these different things, or you're going to fight an admiralty law and get an attorney, right? So I just kind of want to make some points. And so Par is kind of like going to be my victim. No.
Well, I'm hanging in here. I will have some small contributions, but you will be the master in this field, and I did sniff out some areas of like law, and law is also on a meta aspect, like above many topics. Law is very interesting. And I will also comment about my own native language or our Scandinavian Norse languages. There are levels of law, and it's very easily to be tricked. As you're leading us into a story about it, how to approach this subject, which is quite an enormous one, because it's one of the major smoke and screen areas, because those who try to put us feign us in or put us inside fences are kind of they are crafty in utilizing psychology and making you accept what they want you to accept, but they don't want to show too much of their own hand. So I can definitely contribute and discuss with you a little bit. So I'll just leave you back the subject here, because you're planning to land somewhere. So go take it on.
So I just kind of want to put this like really into not so much a spiritual context, but let's just say an energetic, vibrational context. Now, since 2009, I've dabbled in lots of different type of law. Dabble in some admiralty law because we've had to help people, maritime law, really kind of understanding that. Also, a lot of this stuff, because judges wear robes, like priests wear robes. So we're getting into some things that we're going to call ritualized magic. So law is a ritualized magic. And so if we go back to looking at the Vatican, there's plenty of stuff on, people can go back on YouTube and they can look up Luciferian chants by the Vatican Church during certain types of ceremonies. And it always blows me away that how little people understand the language, that they don't even notice that their priest is praying to Lucifer during their, sessions and their sermons before they're getting ready to take communion. And I've done a
Well,
video on this.
that's the blood and flesh, right? So how much more
Yeah,
Luciferian
so
you
it's
want to be?
vampirism and cannibalism, and it's ritualistic. But this is the part that people need to understand, is that, when they go behind the closed doors and they do the prayer over the body and the blood, right? They're energetically using transmutational ritualistic magic to make that biscuit, that cracker, whatever else into somebody's body. They're using transformational magic to turn that wine or grape juice into somebody's blood. So the thing is that you don't really even know what's going on behind closed doors, and you don't really know whose transmutational blood and flesh that you're eating, right? You cannot be certain. And the other thing too is that what makes eating anybody's, even symbolic flesh and blood, a spiritual thing versus if that was happening, somebody sacrificed a baby and was eating that baby's flesh, drinking that blood. What makes it different than it being vampirism and cannibalism? I mean, these are the things, is that I think this is where people get kind of disassociated with religion and magic and disassociation with law, right? So
Well, this is very, very, very interesting. I remember all the days of after Dennis Fetcher's show. I would become intrigued by this radio host talking after, and that's you. And many times either the one with growing things, or in your aspects of law, it's very interesting to listen to someone that made the travel, made the journey, and have something to say. And I actually would like to comment a lot of things, but I'll leave you back into your story. You have a place you want to go, so continue.
Yeah, so that way I don't forget what I want to talk about, and then we can have a more open discussion.
Exactly.
But I think this is important stuff for people to kind of understand how things should be used vibrationally and energetic, and how we do that matters, right? So in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word created everything. If I go back to a lot of my native teachings, I go and look at the original stories that have been told on the rocks, that the Word was a vibrational field, right? And in the native, my teachers always say that their original language is a sing-songy language, which provokes a frequency, right? Which creates into matter. It creates things into matter. It stabilizes matter. It balances out matter. It can be used on weather. It can be used on all kinds of different things in plants. I had a friend of mine when I was growing some native corn. I'm really terrible at language, and I'm super terrible at a lot of the native songs. So I choose not to do them because I don't want to like curse them, make them into curses versus, something beautiful. So I was growing native corn, and I had a native friend of mine come out, and she wanted to sing a earth healing song, a Lakota earth healing song for the corn. And they were really excited about it, and she sang it, and you could feel the plants vibrate. You could feel like the hair stand up on your body because she's helping them. It's the vibrational interaction. So the Word is a vibrational interaction, okay? So that's an important thing to take note of, because if you're working with different kinds of law, you're working with the solid matter substitute of the vibration, right? So if your vibration is not in a good place as you're developing this, then what you get back, no matter what kind of paperwork or law that you do, what you get back is going to be bad. It's going to be in whatever state you are plus 100. So we go to looking at, the judges and them wearing robes. There are no different than the priests conjuring. Now, this is where we really get into some, super ritualized magic. Like if we're going to understand admiralty law. And so this is a really hard thing for people to get formulated in their minds. And they have chiseled and removed a lot of the stones. I've gone and looked around the courthouses. A lot of them had stones that they erected with lines and stuff on them, which meant that anything under the basement level was underwater. That's why if you write FOIAs and you do all this other stuff, that they can refuse to give you that information, because guess what? It's underwater, right? So nobody goes down there. It's underwater, right? You're going to have to hire a scuba diver to go down there and maybe find your documents, right? So the court is above the water, floating on the water. It is a captain's ship. Once you go through, you know, the gate, there's a gate there. It usually opens and closes. And you're stepping aboard a ship floating on the water. That's what Admiralty law is. So when you board that ship, the first thing that you really need to consider is that that captain is the highest authority, which is a priest in a robe, right? And he also has been given really old authority from, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years ago from wherever he sailed from. Because, you know, the captain could be gone and he had to do whatever he needed to do, kidnap people, hold people hostage, whatever else, to get people on his ship to do the work in behalf of the queen and the king or wherever he was coming from. Now, there weren't instant messaging where he could call the queen and say, look, we've got mutiny. We've got this guy who stabbed this other guy. What do you think we should do? He had to make that decision about how he was going to control the ship. So he had his own country called the ship, and he was the authority to do whatever he wanted to do on the ship, right? So when you board that ship, it doesn't matter what the law is.
Correct.
It does not matter what any law that you thought that you put together that you're going to board that ship. Now you're under the law of the captain, who is also posing as a priest in a robe, right? Who becomes the highest spiritual authority and legal authority and political authority and every kind of authority that you could actually, you know, muster up. And he is sailing that ship that you've boarded. So if you were on the high sea, whether they kidnapped you, they kidnapped your identity, they turned you into whoever, you know, gave you a new name and identity, you are trapped on that ship. And the only way off is death. No other way that you're going to get off that ship is death. So do you think that they're going to allow you to keep any wealth or any status of who you are as a energetic being? Or it's going to be fair in any way, shape, or form? And the answer is no. So you literally, when you walk onto that ship through that gate, you're taking your own physical life and giving it to the captain, priest, political leader of that ship. And you do it voluntarily because you think that you can debate this person. And so you're not going to be able to debate them because the captain needs to stay in control of his ship, which means, you know, the judge wants to make sure that he is making enough revenue to keep his job, to keep his post on his ship. This is why it usually takes judges dying in America for them to resign their judicial posts, because they don't usually retire. They hold on. I mean, look at the Supreme Court. We've got most of them on our Supreme Court are like 100 years old.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So, okay, so now that we've got that. So I want people to kind of look at law as a, I don't know, religion, spiritual thing. The word creates a frequency, kind of an idea. So one of the things, I was lucky enough to watch a person named Heather Tutucci, who's in federal prison right now. And I really liked her paperwork. because it was a combination of syntech, also, some common law, just a lot of things. So I really liked her stuff. And I really liked the fact that she actually got UCC's Universal Commercial Codes in to the structure of their law, of the Admiralty law world. And that they were about us being, energetic beings, right? Returning us back to who and that what we are. One of the things she said was that, if you are, so she was an attorney, big attorney, international attorney. She worked for big banks, and her job was to take the commercial property back. So people got loans to buy commercial properties for their business or whatever else, sky towers, whatever. And her job, when they couldn't make the money anymore or payments on it, to go into court and get that property back for the bank. That's what she did. And then she started to realize something was wrong. And then she resigned her law license. And then she started to work with a lot of interesting people, and she really started to try to help the public. And she was the one that showed that the federal trust, the money that we have that they're holding in our name, is in fact actually true. And this is what they put her in federal prison for, was practicing law without a license, which actually they couldn't prove. And she thought that she'd be able to fight them on their ship, and it didn't work out. So, and I'm not really sure what the statistics of what's going on with her, but one of the things she said was that, when you do any kind of law or legal work or anything else like that, you want to do it with love in your heart, that your paperwork is going to go out and it's going to help to educate the people who open the envelope, who take a look at it, that it's going to open their eyes to what they're involved in. Plant a seed, right? And then also, you want to do this as a loving, kind act, not an act of you being in fear, your anger and hostile. You need to prove something, because if in fact that this world is an energetic world and the law of attraction matters, what you're sending out, you're going to get back in full doses, right? And so what is the frequency that you want to your word? So the word is symbolic. The words you're using in the legal structure are symbolic of you conjuring, you creating a frequency or a vibration, and then the words are the magic, the ritualized magic
and
that goes along in the solid world.
The paper is the unleavened bread, and there is the ceremony to conjure up a demon or something. Sorry,
well,
go
the
on.
thing is like attracts like. So you send it out, you're creating it because you're angry, you're in fear, or whatever, you want to get something or you want to prove you're right, then you're going to just get more of that back to you. So the thing is, like I always tell people, like right now I'm working with a friend of mine, and he had like this really crazy thing happen with law, and we're trying to work it out, and I keep trying to communicate with him because he's not giving me the right words yet. So I can't really step in and help him because he hasn't really gotten it clear, and he's a super conscious guy. And I keep telling him, this is where you're at with this. You're probably going to go to jail. You're probably going to have a huge fine, and because of what's levied against you, you're probably never going to get a job again. Regardless if it's true or not, right? So that's the vibration of what's going on. And then he doesn't really seem to get, because then he'll say, well, I'm not going to participate in that. That's not what I want. And so what's happening is that you start to see this anger, you start to see this vengeance, you start to see a lot of this stuff pop up this defending. And this is what they want you to do. Because, see, the more that you defend their magic, right, the more you're defending yourself against the magic that they're conjuring in the legal framework ritual, the worse it's going to get for you energetically. So they want that. They want you to defend your position.
And we are naive to run around and believe the system should be fair, and that's kind of the first stepping stone to you will just drown trying to put yourself on that stepping stone.
Well, but this is the thing, who are you? And this is like the question that kept getting posed to me early on when I was starting to do the common law stuff, was like, first you have to define, before you ever step into those rings, who are you? Right? So working with him, like, I'm trying to get him around to the fact that, you know, number one, who are you, and what do you want out of this situation? Not, I'm going to kill them all. I'm going to, you know, chop them into little pieces. I'm going to, that's not what I want. I'm not going there. I'm not going to participate in that. I hate to use like positive and negative, but what is the positive side of it that puts you into a position where you're not defending yourself anymore, but you know who you are energetically, you stand on that point? So what you want, what do I want out of the situation? Well, I may just want the situation to go away. I want them to, you know, dismiss it. You know, I want to be alleviated from, you know, any slander, you know, that may be being issued against me. What is it that you want? I want to live as a free human being. You know, what is it that you want from the outcome of whatever is happening to you, instead of being in defense of it, right? Being angry, having an attitude, you know, having to be right. Don't cross this line. If you cross this line, this is what's going to happen to you. Because this is what they want. They want you to be a caged animal, because you lose consciousness and you lower your vibration. And so you feed their ultimate word and frequency, and how it's being used against you, right? So, for example, who am I? Well, it took a long time for me to figure out, you know, who I am. I constantly am getting all kinds of people who are always trying to share all kinds of different kinds of law. And I love Judge Anna. I love what she's doing. When I met her, she helped me with some stuff, the same stuff that was going on in the state. I had 4 years of constant attack by the state, constant legal paperwork, you know, and they destroyed my reputation. They destroyed my private practice. I had a private practice that, you know, I was booked 3 months in advance. You know, never got it back. None of that stuff. But, you know, the thing is that I just had to, you know, start, you know, defining, like, who am I? And so how do you define who you are? Well, who is it that you want to be? You know, I define myself now as an original depositor. So anything that anything that has happened in this world since I've been born, especially that revolves around me, any money that these people are creating, any patents, any whatever, anything that I sign, I'm the original depositor on that. And that's how I look at it. I'm the origin of all that's been created. So even in my capitalized name, Kin's really helped me to define a lot of this as well, because my capitalized name is the totality of all that has been created for me, on me, since my birth. Right? But I have to become aware of that, right? Who am I? So not to go in and to defend myself, but raising my vibration in a way that can meet whatever conflict that may come as a result of that split identity. And how does one move that identity together? Because it is it's a ritualistic magic. I mean, look at it. A lot of the common law documents and other kind of law documents, what do they have on them? They have a red seal, right? What is the, if you want to send something registered mail, it's still sent with red seals. Just like the Vatican 2,000 years ago, hasn't changed. Well, what does that mean? Well, it's sealed in blood. Well, whose blood? So if I put my red thumbprint on my signature, I'm saying I'm sealing that with blood, my blood. So that's ritualized magic. I mean, I use an ink print. I don't, I don't poke my finger and put my own blood on it anymore, because now, it would be hazmat, it'd be they couldn't accept it because, it'd be a medical, you'd be trying to spread disease, and then you'd be in a whole other, bunch of trouble, right?
Right.
So what is it? Who am I? I'm the origin. I'm the blood. I am the breath. I am the physical matter of my Father, the creator of all things. And so how I feel, what I do, especially when I'm working with Word and documents and establishing, helping to notify people of who I am and what I am without being angry and violent and, forced into a corner. So I just kind of wanted to throw out there, because I think these kinds of things are super important when we're, talking about a lot of this stuff, because our vibration matters, so far beyond the legal stuff. Our vibration matters, because we have to put into effect what we want and who we are from a vibrational, mental, emotional, and vibrational standpoint into the Word, which is the solidified magic. And it's the end of the ritual, where we bring it into solid matter, right? So it matters.
Yeah, I'm laughing out loud about it. I was almost going to comment about it later, because that's vibration is energy, or reverberating in matter. Then it matters. So that's the literal way of Dog Latin, our lovely beloved English language, Dog Latin.
Right, but I mean, you have so many different kinds of laws that you can't just put it all into Dog Latin. You have mathematical type stuff that's going on in law.
I'm facetious. I'm just teasing you.
Right.
You're making a really nice, interesting conversation here. So I'm waiting here for you to go on.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the universal commercial codes just real quick that Heather put in, because I think it's important for people so that they understand what she was really trying to do, was that she was trying to, in Admiralty law, Universal Commercial Code, which is Universal Commercial Code, right? Which applies to the whole universe, and it applies to the oceans, and it applies to every country, everything in the entire.
It applies to commerce, right?
Right. So, I mean, we call it the Uniform Commercial Code, but it's really the Universal Commercial Code, because all these codes apply to everything in our world. Okay.
Well, and the mermaids, or the merchants on the mer is French or Latin for the sea, so it's in there all the time. Right. I'm like laughing a little bit out loud also about Ken's I joined I joined in that project. It was very interesting, and they have this now, the MERS. The patent is called the MERS. So they immerse us. So in the
Well,
language,
no,
like,
MERS is what the
yeah, well,
the
that's a
banks
bank. That's a
the
banking
banks use for
patent system, but
mortgages. Yeah.
it's in the name there. The name is like flying around there, and it's their vibration
Right.
they put into matter. So they want to matter or decide or want to be important,
Right, but
and
they're because we're not doing it. So
yeah,
you can't blame them, right? Because
sure.
we're stupid.
And just go on. Your story is
Because,
great.
and I had
I
a
want
friend
to
of
hear
mine
more.
say to me the other day, like, well, I can't really, pay attention to that. So I was just calling you to find out your opinion if you could help me. And I was just like, well, why couldn't you have figured this out? I mean, well, I was too busy living. That's what she
Oh, yeah.
said. And I said, oh, so you were too busy living your life to actually pay attention to anything that was going on around you. And you want me to take you all the way back through your timeline to birth and then also teach you law and do all this stuff for you, and you have no money to pay me. You have nothing of intrinsic value to offer me.
Yeah.
To help you through this process.
Mm-hmm.
That's your problem. So, I really try to get away from blame because, of course, people are going to step in and use ritualized magic. I mean, the Vatican's been using ritualized magic to conjure some beings who we don't even really know into the bread and the blood every communion because it's all done behind closed doors. So we don't even really know who we're eating and who we're drinking their blood. We don't know what kind of magical spells that we're being included in. So
Very
this has
important.
been going on for thousands and thousands of years where we just accept to just go along with whatever's going along, right? Without even like stopping to
Great
actually think
point.
about the basics of it. So if people create language and they create law that steals everything from us, well, then we deserve that because we're not conscious enough that we want to be an authority over our own life. Right? We don't want to be educated. We don't want to know because we're too busy living some life until we're no longer living that life. And then we're being, arrested or falsely or accused or whatever else, or things are being taken from us. And then we're like, but wait a minute, this isn't fair. Oh, but you were just living your life. You didn't really want, you just go in and sign a mortgage. What you should have studied about that mortgage before you even signed on the line. Because you signed yourself away.
Sure.
So that's your fault. Right? That's
Sure, but
your fault. And that's the other thing that happens is that people talk about themselves in a third party, a secondary party scenario. And because we can't claim who we are energetically or vibrationally, right? Because we're not claiming that, but then we end up talking about ourselves or the situations that are going on that we don't like, kind of disconnected from them instead of owning them and working on resolving them, which means that we can't be in blame anymore, right? We can't blame the government. We can't blame that this is happening, that that's happening. When you've made money a priority in your life and you're going to get credit and a mortgage and all this other stuff that you didn't pay for.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you say so many interesting words. It's worth reflecting on them. I'm collecting a note paper. Go on. Just go on.
I just wanted to put a video together so that people can kind of start to understand when you're fighting, when you want your government to do this or to do that, you have to define who you are. Am I free or am I not free? Do I have my hand out for free handouts or do I not have my hand out for free handouts because I can make and produce what I need? So who are you? What are you? Are you in charge of your life? Are you a sitting duck? Well, then you made yourself a sitting duck. You've accepted, you've accepted whatever you've accepted. And then you get mad when you don't get that anymore because you've surrendered everything to have that so that you could accept and be compliant. And then when that doesn't work for you anymore because something happens, then you're going to get like a caged animal, and you're not going to think, and you're going to be in fear, and you're going to be reacting. And this is where you get into trouble with legal standings. This is why people go to jail. This is why it doesn't work. It's because the onset, you didn't really study, you didn't figure out who you are, and then that gets imprinted into your documents and paperwork. I mean, think about this. So many people are using legal language that they don't even understand because, I'm just copy pasting this from somebody else's documents. That's a problem because this is something that you've talked about. I'm under somebody's understanding. Understanding means that I'm under this person who wrote these documents, and I'm accepting them when I don't even know if they've done their energetic work. I don't even know if they understand the words that they're using. I don't even know anything about that situation. I'm just looking for some kind of emotional resolution, right? But I'm not in a place of my own honor standing. What am I honorably standing on?
Great. Exactly.
So if I don't know, and I'm reading some documents that I think that I might want to use because I don't really know what my options are, and I read the documents and I go, wow, I don't really like what this is saying. I mean, you can go in and, piece together your own documents for whatever, that you want to do. But it has to work for you. The other thing, too, is how can you defend your legal position if you don't understand your legal position?
Well, yeah.
Because you've adopted it from somebody else, right? Okay.
Or let's understand, because, I'm trying to build that kind of terminology to honor, because we are so used to say understand, and maybe we should comprehend or whatever, but go on.
I need to understand because I don't want to be understanding.
Well, really, that's all. No, and that's what I maybe, if I'll close off, because I want to have you come back here. You're making a very interesting story, so I want to follow you all the way through. I'm making lots of notes here, so maybe we can.
Well, this is the other thing too. Is like if you think about judges, they call them the honorable. And in some cases they are. Oh. They're wearing a minister's coat.
Yeah.
They're selling their own vessel. So they are in honor because they're doing what they need to do for their standing, right? But when we go in, we walk aboard their ship. And so we're in dishonor because we don't know that, number one, because we haven't educated ourselves. Yeah, number two, we participated in going into their court when we could have been smarter and figured out who we are and go, well, yeah, I don't go into
so many great points. Just go on. I'll make notes.
Authority, right? So, I mean, we have to think about a lot of this stuff. I mean, you have to do it in a way that you don't get yourself, a warrant and thrown in jail, because that'll also be part of you not being in compliance as a slave. But, that has a lot to do with you. All that has to do with you.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with them. Has everything to do with you, right? Okay, so I wanted to put in here, just kind of read through here on the uniform commercial code that Heather, in her legal abilities, had put in, and what those things mean. This one is UCC recorded number 200043135, and it's dated May 2000, May 4th, 2000. Now, these filings that she did have never been, they are in perfect standing to this day. They've never been rebuted in any way. So these are perfect. It says with receipt number 36090, a perpetual filing, all amendments thereto reinstated in entry and incorporated by reference as set forth in full, never rebutted, the perpetuity. And this is what it says. Article 1C, restated, and all state body, vehicle, utility, security, property, account, value in existence, known, not known, and all identifiers inclusive of the name and number, therefore, and therefrom, duly registered, not registered within, therefore, therefrom, and thereby, and any and all international and universal equivalents. The perpetuity reinstated, but never rebutted. Due gift of perpetuity, duly made to and accepted by, original in factualized trust equivalent. This like these glasses are like way too strong. It just makes me want to barf. I'm serious. I mean, like anyway, so they're all UCC recorded. I want to get to the point that's really important here. It's
all uppercase text, is it?
Right, these are her UCC codes to help return us back to energetic beings.
It's written in uppercase text, or is it written in English format?
No, it's English and some syntax.
Okay, I'm with you.
But also Admiralty law, because these are UCC codes that she got put in. Sure. But I wanted to put in here like what these UCC codes.
Go on.
In here about what they mean. Let me get to because she had to, in her process, identify who she is. Let me see. It goes into stuff about the Federal Reserve. I mean, there's quite a few UCC codes that she ended up filing, her and her group, back starting in 2000 through 2012. And let's see.
We are approaching the point. It's coming fast. I can hear it.
There's just, anyway, it talks about returning, all the stuff in that makes you like the original depositor over everything and pulls all your stuff back together. But I have to think about that. There's this one part in here that I just need to find it. It talks about who we are energetically as an energetic being, and that we're the origin and we're the original depository of that. And just have to see here. Sorry to have it together, but I wanted to.
Well, if you want, I could small talk or bring up some small points, and you break me off when you find it.
Yeah, here we go. I am original essence and signature, source of all that is in perpetuity, without prejudice, nuc pro tunic, it's original, the due process, possession of the original title in perpetuity, inclusive of original essence and signature, duly being, original currency and value, original being duty, self-aware, original authority, and
authenticity. No.
Yeah. Anyway, so the thing is like what it's returning you back to. I love this part. Original duly being original value and currency, original depositories, original deposits, original issues, original limitless value in dual, pre-approved, pre-authorized, and prepaid, original authority and authorization in perpetuity. Let's see what else. There's just like, I just love, like what this returns you back into, which is like everything. It says here,
The high priest in court obviously is very angry because she put him in his position, so that's why they punish her.
But you know what? This is the thing that I, like even with Kin, one of the conversations that Kin and I have had offline, is that if people study the law and they learn the law, there are these weird, like we would call them weird or strange things that are added, once you get out of the anger or that you have to be right or you have to do all this other stuff, you start to actually look at all of it, right? And read it and figure it out. And there are these areas that are almost put into the system that if you are intelligent enough and understand who you are, you can use them to release yourself from the whole process. And that's one of the things that Ken Doss he found in, copyright patents and trades. I think he calls it the UCC 9, I think is what he says. But he said it's almost been put in to, if you're smart enough, to release yourself from it, from the system. So it's almost like a test. It's almost like a spiritual journey. Of you becoming competent in the solid world.
Now, a question is a quest. So that's what you're saying. A test is a quest. So continue.
Yeah, well, it's not a quest. It's you identifying who you are. There's no quest that you need to go on. I had one of my teachers, when I was 23, I ended up studying with her for a year. She had been originally kidnapped off her reservation by NASA. She had like abilities that, are not what you see in this world, right? So.
Well, they take this away. I will make a comment.
No, we're not going there. We're not doing flame. We're not taking things away. Because what they did was they only made her stronger.
Yeah.
Right? Because she evolved through it. She energetically, evolved. So anyway, one of the things that she said, you have, this is your life. You have over here on this hand, God, and you having that relationship with your God or your creator, and it's right there, right? You don't need to go on a journey. You just have to accept it, that I'm one with my creator. End of story. There is nothing else in between it. But on this other hand, we have this stupid human, crap that we choose to live in. And we decide that we're going to go on a quest. We're going to go on a journey because we have to self-discover. And there isn't anything to discover.
Well, you should understand there's two sides. And you're here in the middle.
What path do you choose? Do you choose to be one with your creator and there's no separation? Or do you choose to go on a whole lifetime journey that may not ever end and you may never, ever figure it out? Because you've separated yourself from creation and you've separated yourself from creator by the thought that you have to do something.
Well, and the creator made us have a right hand and a left hand. They often talk about the right path, left path. But, here's the body.
What if that's just garbage?
The creation is...
What if that's just garbage? What if that's misleading garbage because it's been created in this world?
But I'm creation. I'm of creation, and the creator will create things like this. And here is the balance, And I have this to go out in the world and do things. And I should obviously not only use my right hand or my left hand. I should be in balance. So I should discover myself, and maybe if you look here, you will find something interesting, and you will see the mirror image.
This world is a polarity and it's a duality.
Well,
it separates everything into two. Even our brain is separated into two. But what is a unified being? What's a unified? You hear all these people this spiritual talk about a unified field. Well, what the fuck is a unified field? A unified field is you operating as a uni, as a one.
Yes,
Not a
very nice.
two, not a two
Yes,
hand. So a lot of the stuff that we've been taught in this world is how to separate how one
exactly.
thing is another thing. Like I talk to people about this all the time. You have this heaven experience that people report on, right? And what is
Okay.
it? It's some kind of light ray that people get pulled up into that can't really fight against it. Well,
Oh yeah.
what would that be? That would be
Well,
an extraterrestrial UFO abduction experience, right? But because people want to separate things, I got a left hand and a right hand, there's dissonance in between of what is really going on in this world
mm-hmm.
because they can't put it together
Well,
because it
good,
can't
good.
be that and it can't be this. So
Yes,
almost
yes,
all spiritual text and everything is lying to you,
yes, yes,
right?
yes.
And we
Well,
adopt it
straight to
as
the
our
face.
spiritual
Correct.
journey instead of just saying, I am a universal, unified being and holding that frequency. And therefore, anything that I do in this solid world and turning into matter in my own behalf becomes that.
Yeah. Well,
So if I'm dealing with law and I'm a separated being, and I got all this weird stuff going on in my head that law is somehow outside of myself, that there's natural law,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's creator law, there's all this different law, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to adapt myself to it all, then you're going to have problems because it's all not
Yeah.
going to fit, and it has to fit inside you. If I'm a
Yeah.
universal
Schizophrenia.
being and I'm a unified field,
Yeah.
which means all of me is together in one unified field, there is no separation, there are no lines, then
Well,
anything that I'm going to graft in the language that I'm going to use, say even in law or whatever else, is going to graft that into solid, the word.
mm-hmm.
I am God, I am the creator, and I am creating the word as I feel it and know it as a unified field. Right. So I'm just trying to like put some stuff out there, and I knew you would be a good candidate for this because I
Well,
watch you
it's a
trying
really
to
great
do it.
story. When you talk about this, you have lots of experience of the journey from someplace in this land of law, and
Well,
this
because
was
a
one of
lot of
the
it didn't
favorite
fit.
things. One of the favorite things listening to you on Revolution Radio was talks about this because actually, as you started out, there are lots of people made this kind of very adventurous journey into what is law, and we have many courageous men and women portraying their experiences, they are important to try to find. So your picture about it and your story here is really interesting. You have very, very deep and
But so this,
you you you
no
you
matter if
you
you venture, no matter if you venture into law, you venture into growing your own food, you
exactly.
venture into
Well,
collecting
yeah,
wildcrafting
yeah,
medicine,
yeah.
you venture into whatever you're going to do for work. No
Correct.
matter what you choose to venture into,
Mm-hmm.
you have to know who you are. For example,
Well, yeah.
when I go out to wildcraft medicine,
Mm-hmm.
I write it down on the day that I'm going to go out to look to see if those plants are ready or not. So they know when I'm coming, right? On
Mm-hmm.
the day that I'm going, I sit down and I align myself and I don't have
Yeah.
anything else going on. And I connect with them on the morning I get up. And then I
Well,
go out, look, and I communicate as a unified field because they're in my field of
well,
resonance.
that's beautiful.
And then I take the medicine if it's ready. If it's not, sometimes we have to work things out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the plants and I have to work out some contractual issues, or maybe I've approached the situation in a very not good vibration and they want to talk to me
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that. So
yeah,
this is the way that I'm going as a unified field and how I'm
yeah,
resonating
yeah, great.
out. It includes everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to grow food. I want to put those seeds in my mouth. I want to put them into the soil. I want to create a magical alchemically bed of soil
Mm-hmm.
with my own hands and my own vibration and the materials around me, bringing those into the alchemical process. to grow my food. And then I want to
Really?
watch over it and care for it, because that is consciousness. That is being a unified being, being
Hmm.
responsible energetically, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, energetically, conjuring through alchemical processes in me into my outside world to develop exactly what I need. Like when people talk to me about having, malnutrition. Well, it's because you don't have a relationship with your environment and your plants.
Yeah, well, and yourself.
Well, yourself first, but then you have to,
Yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah.
when we go back to this whole mindset of like, well, I'm living my life, I didn't have time to look at the law. I didn't have time to do all this other stuff.
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
then the thing is like, okay, well, how can you be responsible for your health? How can you be responsible for yourself politically? How can you be responsible for
Well,
yourself legally? These are your responsibility, because the creator didn't send you here with a lack of anything,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
There's
and
this really great thing in the Neil Donald Walsh books, the Conversation with God books, that I read during the period where my whole family was dying, and I would have to travel
oh,
down to California and help provide home health care for them when I could. And so
okay,
on the drives, I would listen to the audio tapes of the
yeah.
Conversation with God books and whatever else I could get my hands on that could
Hmm.
help me, because it was a really intense period of my life, losing my
Sure.
whole family in a very short period of time. The anger and blame I had for the
Well,
pesticide
that's
companies
that's
and for the
that's
doctors and
your
the
father and mother and more.
everyone, like 15 family members died all at the same time from
That's really
98 to 2003. Yeah. So,
okay.
but in order to not have blame against the medical society for, the cancer treatments that were killing my family,
Mhm.
or, the pesticide companies, or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
nuclear reactors that were creating power that were leaking radiation, all these things,
yeah. Well,
I had to keep myself straight. So I listened to a lot of the Conversation in Gods when I'd have to travel down there for 4 hours and back, just to really kind of keep myself straight. And there was this one point in the book where Neil Donald Walsh, tells God, and you have to know Neil Donald Walsh's story. He, was living his life, right? I was living my life, and then all of a sudden, I had an injury. He had an injury, and he broke his neck. He broke his neck so severely that he ended up homeless and living in a homeless camp. And they tried to help him, but he was so angry about losing everything, like he just couldn't get himself together. Then finally, as a part of the healing process, he started talking to the universe, saying, how could you do this to me? What the fuck are you thinking? And he got a voice back, and the voice said, do you really want to know?
yeah.
Do you really want to know what your problem is? Or do you not? And he said, I really want to know. So he started, and he wrote books on all the notes that he took, having a conversation with his being. And he calls it the Conversation with God books. And one of the things that he gets mad one day, and he's, basically yelling at the being, saying, how could you put us here in this world, and it's, completely unsafe, and, there's no security, and anything can happen to you, and all this bad stuff is always happening to you. And the being said, I don't see it that way. He said, if you have children and you have a house and you have a big fence, and you know that they're outside and they're safe in their environment because you created the environment in that backyard, and you know that they're safe, that's how I felt when I put you there. So the thing is that it's our thinking, it's our separation from everything, our unwillingness to do what we need to do as a responsible party on towards everything in our life. If we're resonating with it or not resonating, well, we should be resonating with everything, right? But we don't. We want to just live our life, to make the money, have our vacations, have a lot of children that we can't really support, and that we don't really have. And this is kind of a hard thing. Like I've asked a lot of women, like, why did you have kids? Well, you get married and you have kids. No, you don't. You think about what you want your life to be. Who are you? Who are you first? And what do you want out of this life? Then you add on the components of what you want your life to map out. You just don't do it because that's what you do. And so you're giving up your rights.
Go ahead. You can continue your story. I could make comment. Continue.
Yeah. So you're giving up your rights as a co-creator on the planet. I'm not saying having kids is a good thing or a bad thing. I didn't have them because I wanted to seek out the ultimate question. Who am I? What am I? What am I doing here? And what do I want out of this life? So I decided to have an education. And early on, I looked at a 30-year mortgage as the ultimate prison trap. So obviously, anybody that I was going to date, they wanted to have a house. They wanted to have a white picket fence. They wanted to have 2.5 kids. They wanted to be in debt, you know, in order to have these things, right? They didn't really want to co-create a life. They didn't want to have to be responsible to figure out what they ultimately wanted in this life. And this life is short. And most people spend 30 years of their life paying a mortgage. For what? So that you can say that you're following along in compliance like all the other people? How are we changing this world if you don't really become a unified being first? And what do you really have? And this is going to be hard for a lot of people to listen to. What do you really have to offer your children if you don't know who you are? And you cannot prepare them to take responsibility for every avenue of their life and not sell themselves out. So, you know, like I have another friend, you know, Ken Scott, who is always working on let's end the birth certificate, earn the birth certificate registration. No, we have to raise children. First, we have to figure out, we have to step back and we have to figure out, who am I? What do I want from my life? Because we're defending things. We're fighting and fighting and fighting against everything. And energetically, the more you fight it, the more energy you give it. And the worse it becomes.
Well,
so we have to step back and identify, who am I?
You have very good points in everything. All this talk is very, very interesting. Go on.
So yeah, so no matter, you know, ending kind of a thing is that you're not going to be able to get any type of law to work for you unless you know who you are and the resonance, the frequency that is coming out of you into the solid world, and what you're conjuring, manifesting, making so through the word and the deed is never going to work right. And I learned this more and more and more about, like, for example, I get in arguments with people about this. Like, we can't just do paperwork for people. We can't just give them the gun and the bullets to give to somebody else in different kinds of courts when they want to defend themselves against things. That's the wrong approach. They're going to use it to defend themselves, which now makes my words and deeds in helping them to craft this stuff bad, dark, sinister, because now the projection of that energy, this good, beautiful energy that I've created, is being used by somebody else to be right in this world and to defend them from their threats.
Very good point.
If you're separated from the creator, you got a lot to be threatened about. And that's not, you know, kind of like where I like to be. So I'm still working with who I am. And because a lot of the shamanism work I don't do any of this cheap ass modern shamanism. I really resent the fact that people call shamanism things that it is not. I come from, you know, bloodlines that I didn't really get to study from in Russia, but from my father's side, I also have bloodlines in the United States. My great grandmother, I believe, was Native, even though a lot of it was erased just because of how powerful she was and the things that she did and how she managed her life. Is very Native. Didn't know that growing up, but and I resent a lot of the more modern day shamanism. But old shamanism tells me that even in a physical body, that if I'm doing everything right by the practices and I'm resonating inside of myself as a whole filled being, then nothing in this world has any limitations on me, which means that I can live as long as I want indefinitely in this body. I can walk through doorways. I mean, I love Lynn Andrews' books. I read them when I was in high school, and her books, and she always talks about this Native woman called Twin Dreams, who is 2,000 years old in her physical body, and she goes through these doorways because she's learned, who she is. So if I have to define who am I am an energetic, unified system, a being that has no limitations. Now, how that plays out in the physical world, sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong. Just depends on if I get thrown off or if I don't get thrown off. For example, there's all these things in the physical world that have a tendency to kind of trigger me, and then I have to come back to the point of balance. I have to come back to being a unified system of energy, and then redefining how I'm going to interact with the outside world. For example, with this whole COVID thing, they gave us, unemployment for self-employed people in June. And so I've been getting that, but it's very limited because I can't really prove income because I'm self-employed. So it's very little every week, which, I'm kind of grateful for. But there's this point where they wanted me to provide them with all kinds of documents, a valid US ID, proof of mailing address, all this other stuff to be able to keep it, because nobody's working. There is no revenue coming in. In the United States, we're not like other countries that have socialized stuff. We don't get welfare unless I have a kid and I'm single and I have a deadbeat dad. Like, the likelihood of me getting welfare is zero. So I've never really held on to the system in a way that it was going to help me. All the education that I've ever had, I could never get loans to pay for it. I paid for it all out of pocket, like some $120,000. I mean, I'm getting ready to take another 40 credit curriculum that starts this week on some more osteopathic medicine, so that I can keep upgrading, my education base that I have to pay for out of pocket. And so I did it my way with the unemployment office. And, I could feel the darker entities in this because I couldn't figure out why I just got unemployment and now I'm going through all these reviews. And I could tell that, there are just some things that are operating behind the scenes that are not so positive. And when you're doing a job and you don't know who you are, these things are easily piggybacked by you, and they trigger your thoughts and how you are. So you may see somebody's name and you may just not like them, for no reason, because of the things inside of you are triggering a lot of this stuff. So you go after them in a way. So I sent them in, sitting, thinking about it. I just wrote a letter saying I can't prove income. I was ordained. I went through St. John's University in Louisiana back in the old days, where you had to do long distance education to get my associate's degree in theology. And then I traveled back there and I wrote him a long letter just saying I was ordained in 2005. And then, in 2009, I became a public minister in the state of Nevada. And, I opened my church, which I still have, the Ministry of Consciousness, in 2009. And it's mostly an outreach. And so we relied on donations. The donations paid my bills. I did all the work for free because we never had enough money, for me to actually do the outreach programs, and I just was totally honest. I stayed within my unified self, and I wrote them a letter explaining exactly what my situation is, what the work that I do that's not paid, that benefits a lot of other people, benefits, food production, because we specialize in, I specialize in, uh, large scale land restoration, native seeds, a lot of the stuff, biodynamics, also teaching people how to grow food on their land seasonally, restoring their land, nutrient density food. A lot of this stuff is part of the outreach that I do. Here, I've helped a lot of homeless people, on the river, and which helps the state and government. They don't even realize it, but because I'm not getting any donations from COVID. So I just sat in myself and said, I didn't try to, one of the things I find is that when we're in a situation of stress or distress, we try to justify our converting ourselves into a story to project outside of ourselves law or legal or this review or whatever else that they're going to do. So I gave them things that they're not used to getting, but that they realize that there are going to be a lot of people out there that are like myself, right?
Oh, that's good.
And so in all honesty, because I really thought today I would get on there, to file for this week, and I would have been removed. I really thought, okay, if I'm going to stand in my power, I'm going to stand in my unified self. I have to let go of if I'm going to get money, if I'm not going to get money, because I have to do this with honor standing.
That's great.
Right? I have to do this, in the way that I need to do it, and in my full power, my unified self, and resonating out. And how do I, explain that in a loving, caring manner? And how do I maybe educate them that there may be more people like myself, and that if they're going to, remove me from that system, there are going to be consequences laid upon them, because I'm going to be one more person that's homeless on the streets. I'm going to be one more person that isn't actually helping the economy by being able to put money into the economy. I'm going to be one less person that is going to be outraged and increasing in violence, because that's what happens.
Yeah, and you should make, and probably you did, you made them realize that they should carry that, and because many people feel, well, they don't care if I go under, they will sit there and
but I didn't take that stance. I didn't really care about ultimately
you
how
did
they were going to take it. All I could do was be in myself in full power with no separation. And I even put my red thumbprint on there. I put my blood seal on there. I did it all in the way that I needed to do it, without threatening them, without scaring them, without me being in fear. And so we'll see what happens, but it looks like so far things are okay. I mean, they haven't really gotten back to me about it, and we'll just have to see what it goes. But thing is like, I had a lot of anxiety, and each point in time, that I walk, I have to accept whatever is going to happen in the solid world.
Sure.
But all I can do is resonate to the highest level, being in a unified field, creating my own unified field with no separation, and working with the Creator, and ultimately having the responsibility that every thought, every feeling, where my feet go, how I'm doing, is a resonance ultimately of a unified being, right? In a unified way. And sometimes it may be confrontational. It may bump up against the world in a way that they're not prepared for. But I think that it's an easier pill to swallow for them when I'm doing it in a place of peace and balance. So mostly I just really wanted, and that's what natural law, if I could call it that, or native spirituality is about, that I've learned, is that I have to be in the center of my wheel, my personal medicine wheel, right?
Yeah.
And like the Cherokees talk about, the great medicine wheel in the sky is held at 4 points with the spider web. And then in the center of that wheel is the fire, or us. That's where we're at. We're in the constant transmutational fire, burning the old off, bringing in new. It's a constant state of transmutational process to keep, clearing and transmuting the old energies into the new energies. And the way that I look at it now, because everybody has to in some way, take information and knowledge and then put it into a way that you can understand. But I look at, like, say this is just a paper, but imagine it's a circle. It's my medicine wheel.
Okay.
And I've got to be in the center of it, right?
Sure.
So so here's my medicine wheel, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I have to be in the center of that wheel. Now, every direction means something. There's the 4 directions. They all are very important and valid. You also have all these other subgroups of information and all these different kind of components of energies.
Sure.
The rocks symbolize, the acupressure meridian points, right, which have a symbolic meaning that go out into the world, that deal with animals and the minerals and colors and just all these different kinds of factors.
Yeah.
So the big thing is that I learn is that here's the 4 directions. Yeah. I think there's 64 stones total in the medicine wheel.
Well,
so
yeah.
64 points, right? And the cool thing about the medicine wheel, there's a native guy that I read his book that was just really profound for me. I forget what his name is, but one of the things he said was that the cool thing about the medicine wheel and the native people in the Americas is that it's a transportable medicine. It isn't like megalithic medicine where that's it, that's where it's at, that's what it's doing. But the medicine wheel was meant to be transportable, so that you could, if you had to travel with your relatives,
Well, that's the wheel you just held up. The wheel you held up is the universe, and you're in the center. But if you find someone else, he will transport it into his center. So the knowledge or the traditions or wisdom.
But actually, the physical part of it is that they could pick up the stones from the location and take them with them, and then reapply it and re-put it down.
That's even a level more, because the actual stones in position, I'm quite sure will have the same ancient knowledge or wisdom across the world, because you will align yourself with the universe or creation around you, and you will be vibrating together with it.
Well, you're the one that has to be the vibrating tool in your unified field, resonating out. It isn't that it's going to do it and then it's going to raise your vibration. That's not how it works. You have to raise your vibration first.
Go on.
So the medicine wheel, the way that I understand it, is like I have to constantly stay in balance of my own medicine. So I have my own personal medicine wheel, and then how my medicine wheel aligns with somebody else's medicine wheel and where they're at on their wheel. So one of my teachers also talked to me about, she said that, and I'm just going to put some circles around here.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah,
This is where I'm supposed to be in balance, resonating out into the edges of my medicine wheel, right?
And you will have lines.
All your life experiences will show up as energetic bundles on the outside of your wheel. So say, for example, you have a very emotional experience, doesn't matter if it's positive and negative, and that may show up, let's just say that may show up on, like the west side of your wheel right here. This is that life experience, right? eventually on the whole outer edge energetically, you'll have all these experiences of your life on your wheel. But what happens, and you have everything that mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and physical, which could also include relationships. It has money, resources, bad, good, and different. Now, one of the things she said was that because you have all these things, that you've built, these little experiences on the outside of your medicine wheel. So I had this visual one day. This was about 15 years ago. I was reading in this book, and it was saying that, it was this relationship book, like how women, because have a tendency to be more spiritual, how we need to kind of bring that back a little bit in order to date men, because a lot of men might feel confronted by that. And the term that she used in the book was that your cheese will slide off your cracker. The guy will look at you and go, oh, wow, her cheese just slid off her cracker, right? Well, right? So I saw the medicine wheel. I saw my medicine wheel because I was living in a very imbalanced way. I was triggered by the things out past my medicine wheel. Sure. So what I would do was I would take steps emotionally towards that direction, or mentally towards that direction. Yeah. And I started to notice energetically that every time I took a step off the center, my wheel, like a plate,
wobble.
And that the things that I had built on it would actually slide off.
Okay.
And this is why you would have to start all over again.
Well, that's
because you couldn't keep your wheel balanced because you weren't in the center of it, and that you were constantly getting it to lean in different directions, and then whole things would slide off.
Well, so you have to trust. Over. You have to trust what's on the circumference will have its own weight, sort of, and you will be in the middle to balance everything, or to attract the.
Well, you have to be in the middle. You have to be in the middle to balance it. You have to be in the middle to feed it energetically. You have to be in mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual balance in order for it all to resonate and to do what it does. It's like a force field. I mean, but not one that you're going to use as protection. Like, there's no need for any of that. There's no need to protect yourself, because the thing is if you're operating as a unified field, you're ultimately like this acupuncture needle that is actually solving some of the energetic problems of wherever you go. It doesn't even matter where you go, and everything that comes forth from you. But you lose everything because your cheese slides off your cracker, because you take a step out of balance in any direction, and now everything, you just lost it all. And you actually have to go back and spend years trying to rebuild some of it, when a lot of it was unnecessary, right? Because you couldn't stay in balance, because guess what? You don't know who you are.
No, exactly. Good point.
Now, are you an energetic being that everything comes from out and into the physical world? So antimatter creates matter? Or does the matter more, and that you are being pulled around and triggered by what is outside of you that you believe is real? More real than you energetically, and more real than you, the creator. So I just kind of want to, last point I want to make is,
you're doing good.
Yeah, my last teacher, Babido, he died in June 2016.
Who?
My last native teacher, Babido.
Okay, sure.
And he was like, three most powerful people I've ever seen in this world was my great-grandmother, the native medicine woman I studied with when I was 23, super powerful, off the charts. And then Babido was the third, because they knew who they were, right? And so the world around them moved when they said move, right? So they had a power that I didn't really, took me a long time. I'm still working with it. So I've been wanting to actually do work with Bobido because I heard about his earth healing work and the stuff that he was doing. I mean, he was bringing water back to areas that were completely drought ridden. And not only the rainwaters to fill up the lakes, but the springs started back up, right? So he had this innate power because not that he believed like in an ego way that he could actually bring the water back, but he knew if he went to the area as a unified being, he could heal the energy of that area and bring its energy and vibration back, right? And it might take him 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but the last 16 years of his life, this is all he did. He was on the road all the time. So I really, for 2 years, really wanted to meet him while he was doing 10 days of ceremony. Plus, he was going to do this PowerPoint thing with how the earth works, you know, based on native systems and stuff. So I moved heaven and earth, and it was a really trying period in my life. And I ended up in my van going up there and spending the whole duration there. And there were all these very shamanic events that happened that were lessons towards me. He was really awesome. He always was looking, there could be a group of people, but he was really wanting to teach me something, you know, because I think that he thought that I could actually grasp it. So we're doing this medicine wheel build, and I had done a lot of them. So I was just in the background in case he needed help or other people needed help. But, you know, I give other people the opportunity to do something that they haven't done before. And there were a lot of white people there that really hadn't grasped the fact of who they are. And so they were doing it in a mechanical way, right? Okay. Instead of from a vibrational way. Anyway, then we activated the medicine wheel and all this other stuff. Well, before we, started doing the activation and all of that, there was this moment where he looked over at me. He had this big, huge eagle feather, and it looked like a sword, basically, and he would use it. He would dig into people and pull out and fling their energies and clean them off, kind of a thing. He used that thing as a weapon, and, a power weapon, really, energetic weapon. And he had his eagle feather, and he dropped down on his knee, and he turned around and he looked at me. And here's everybody, putting the rocks down. And it was this moment that people didn't even notice, a very shamanic moment that was between him and I, even though he was quite a ways away. And he dropped down on his knee and he took his eagle feather and he looked at me and he said, and there was like this kaboom, you could feel this energy, like power come out of him. And he said, "It is because I say it is." And then boom, and he hit that eagle feather. I swear to God, it went through the ground and came back up, and it was unharmed, the feather. And so what he was trying to teach me is that when we are who we are, which also carries a huge amount of responsibility. I have a huge amount of responsibility because not only am I operating as a unified being trying to navigate this world, in balance, but I also have to think of the balance of the planet as a wheel, as a medicine wheel. And what is the most beneficial thing that I can do, which means I have to go out and talk to these beings to make sure that they're getting heard, that I'm helping them in solid matter to do what they need to do or what they're here for, right? So it takes a lot more work to be in power because I can't just do things selfishly, right? In a unified field operating in multiple other unified fields, I have to take into consideration not only what's good for me, what's the highest vibration, but what's also the highest vibration of what I'm going to create in the solid world. So if I am angry at somebody and I want to take legal action at them, everything that's going to be in the path of that male or my vibration, even going out and swimming in the river, me writing the angry legal letter, blah, 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 everything that comes in the path of that while I'm in that position is going to be harmed. And so I have to come back to do no harm. So then I have to drop back, and I have to actually figure out what is the best energy, best way to actually carry this out, not only for myself. And sometimes I have to actually step out of it and walk away and go, I've decided in understanding I'm not going to participate for whatever reason.
Did you just call me?
So those are just kind of some thoughts. So because I know that you and I have gone back and forth, and I thought this would be a really good talk to have about where you need to be.
Great. It's a really nice story, well thought through and well delivered. So it's very interesting.
I think it's a point that we miss, like all these other people who are helping legally do all this stuff. It's this point that is overlooked, and it's totally missed, and it's, for me, the most significant and important thing.
And better yet, because even I could feel myself as quite seasoned in diving into lots of experiences presented. Like if you study this field, and you will come naturally to many fields just from the center of the medicine wheel. That's your balance, and everything around you. It will be different subject, but it's still connected to the center or to your existence, you yourself. Who am I? Who am I?
Right, but so, you're the antimatter, right? And you are the one that is creating the matter.
Well, and
so it isn't all this stuff revolves around your wheel. Well, it's that you're creating it.
Well, and I absorbed a lot of things around from different presentation, and your presentation today feels very interesting experience to follow through when you did it. So it was very relevant and very complimentary, or even it's a very high level interesting story, and the way you presented it. I made lots of notes about many things. So there would be millions of things to discuss if one wished.
Yeah. So the other thing too is, like, I was getting a lot of email because, it's not really apparent how to get a hold of Ken, and somebody else manages his DOSification website and stuff like that. But I kept getting a lot of email about where's the paperwork to submit. And it's like, these are people that didn't even show up to the class. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so you have a problem that you have to solve, and you think that, submitting this paperwork is just going to solve it, when you haven't even, that's all people wanted. A lot of the people didn't even want to take the classes.
Now what you say today is much better, more important thing than to give the paper. Here is where you start. You start with almost the medicine wheel. And
you start with you and fixing your world around you.
Yeah, who am I? And I could tell you for sure, and you've told me many times, if I could pronounce things in the word of I or me much more, that's a very good way to start. And I come from a culture, and I'm not the social leader of my area. There would be, of course, leaders that would be natural leaders, but we have a culture, very, very strong culture, and very valuable culture from the area I come from, and we are the extreme of the extreme in the high trust society, social space or realm, and the many other parts of the world will. That's almost like your long, very nice story about who am I and whatever. I will try to pick some few.
So this is another thing. Yeah, let me put this out there.
Okay.
In a native culture that I've been in, I never hear them say I never hear them say me. It's always about us or we, right? It's always a very community type vibration. But this is the issue. Years ago, when I was 18, and I first stepped into my first ceremony, I did not know who I am. And until I know who I am, I can't be honorable to make decisions or participate in the we.
Exactly.
Because, and then you have all these other people who are always looking to run away to these communities, these like fairy tale ideas of, the way things could be or the way that things were. And the thing is that, the thing is we have to let go of that too, because we have to figure out who I am. I mean, I walked away from over 30 different communities, whether I was consulting for them, helping them with food growing, helping them to set up a community mindset, whatever it was going to be. I even did I did some ashram type community stuff. And I have to tell you, like, they never really helped me to identify who I was, because they were operating in a we. And a lot of people were there because they didn't want to be responsible for themselves. They didn't want to have to think about the I and who am I. And so then you have problems on these communities, because you have people that have all these ego problems because they don't know who they are. They've never been responsible for the totality of their own life and their own decisions. And
great points.
You can't know we, and you can't do no harm, and you can't participate in a we and us until you have established who you are and being in your power, because then you'll be in the balance of your wheel, and then that emanates out into more balance into the world, instead of trying to find an alternative because you're so far out of balance and so not responsible for even the thoughts you think, that you actually create more violence and more anger and more hostility wherever you go, and blame. And in a community, you cannot have blame. In a community, there cannot be blame, because you are there.
There's a function if you step the toes badly to harm the survival of you together with the others. I would argue maybe that.
Right.
I'll try to conquer back a little bit of this speak from before, because in our culture, actually, you will have the English word Yule. Yule is the time of the Christmas festivities. If you try to follow me there, and that's actually in our language wheel. That's what we use in our language is very, the Yule word is very close to wheel, and the linguist tries to guard this question, like, well, maybe it's not a connection, but the time wheel is quite obvious, and you bring up these persons with ego things, and in another little tidbit of your painting the picture of your beautiful story was like, to some Western participated with the natives, and they were too mechanical about it, and that's like the ego or the mechanical. Well, you say it from the law perspective, that does matter, and that's like in the thinking world we say things matter, but that's actually matter is things, physical things. So the who you are, or ego, or your behavior, or how you see yourself, and who am I, and that will go from the seeing capacity in the English language. So it's really interesting. But the wheel, the medicine wheel, or as actually Yule in the English word, when you celebrate Yule and merry Yule, means actually the wheel time. So the you helped me to pick up one of the stones of the medicine wheel, but I will assure you, the center of a medicine wheel will surely have spokes of lines of stones going out to the circumference, or the circle around it. And the famous medicine wheel is Utah or thereabouts. Is
I think it's called the Legend.
It's a heritage site, and very it's researched very carefully, for it actually aligns the celestial season.
Right. So the thing is that the one thing that I think people miss out on the medicine wheel is the center area, because you can define, what that will is going to be for. If it's going to be for a community, it's going to be for stabilizing weather, right? Because there are wheels and there are stones that are developed to create being able to master weather, right? And the type of weather you have. You can change drought. You can change a lot of these things. But the key in the medicine wheel is if there's an empty space, that means you and creator, that's where your spot is, that you define for yourself. If there's a stone there,
Sure.
This main stone may serve a purpose. It may balance the weather out, or whatever that purpose is going to be. And then in some cases, some Native people would utilize different things in the center, like, for example, a buffalo head, right?
Yeah, I saw
A
it.
skull. So the key here is you in all of it.
Well,
and
yeah.
what is in the center, what you designate to be in the center.
And all
And
your
most
story was very
importantly,
focused on it.
in
You
your
made a very
personal
great story about it.
medicine.
Continue.
Yeah, your personal medicine is you and the creator as one unified field need to be in the center of that wheel. That's your personal medicine. Now, if you want to go out and create other, medicines, you may want to use different things to establish what that wheel is going to be for. But you can't do that work as a we and an us for the planet or whatever else until you are stabilized in your unified field with the creator in the center of your personal medicine. If you're still tipsy-turvy, your cheese is still sliding off your cracker.
Sure, yeah.
You have no business in participating in the we or the us and going out and thinking, and I probably add this in, even though it's a talk about law, but I get so angry about some of these, and I'm going to use the word white people, and I am white, but but they decide to use some of this witchcraft and whatever else, which is not the same as Native spirituality. And they go out and open portholes because they're working with beings that want those portholes open. Now, that is not in the benefit of us, and that is not in the benefit of the planet. And for somebody to decide to not do their personal work and to go about doing something like that, which will only create harm because it's adding fuel to the fire, it's adding energies that should not. If you go to a ceremony and you do a Native ceremony, they open up the veil so that we can speak to the good spirits. We can connect to the grandmothers and the grandfathers. But at the end, that's shut down. It's closed down in a very significant and serious way, right? So that these are not kept open, right? They're very important not to do that. And you only go to ceremony with somebody who is designed, who knows who they are, who have gone through, may come from lineages of people who do this type of work, right? Depending on what it is, because they know how important and significant it is. So this, I've thought a lot about a lot of this stuff. Do we like Anna von Reitz? And I love Anna. I love what she's doing. I was the one that actually told her that she should start a blog in 2010. So people, other women, because everybody in common law was a man. And I wasn't resonating with male and how they were dictating common law. It wasn't working for me. I really needed a woman out there. So, but is it right? Is it right for one person to dictate the legal, standing legal paperwork for the all? Is that right? I mean, these are questions that I think about. And I think from my standpoint that I wouldn't want to be in that position because I don't think I'm right enough. I don't think that I'm in a good enough way to be able to imprint the world in a magical ritual from the frequency becoming the word.
Yeah, great.
And the word created everything. So that's why I kind of stay away from a little bit of Anna's work. I mean, I have utilized some of it to do stuff that I needed to do on my journey.
Educational, it's interesting
I'm still identifying myself in what my legal standing is. So I'm very particular and I'm very careful, and I don't want the courts to sign off on any of my documents. I don't want them to file. I don't want them to apostille. I don't submit them to the court because you know what? Then I'm still underneath their understanding. I am not in my own understanding.
The honorable judge took your honor and fed off on it. So that's
approved it or authorized it or whatever else. And it's like that. I don't want that. I'm not interested in that. I want to be a whole
Great.
person standing on my own, in my own language, in
Yeah.
my own way. And so it's a little bit of trial and error with me trying to navigate the world in the way that I need to navigate it. But I'm not going, I have to really, my big thing is not to convert myself, or in my mind trying to work it out where I can justify something so that I could conform to get something from the outside world that I may need, right? Or that I want. That's where the trouble starts.
Yeah.
And so I will have to, like, for example, with the unemployment thing, even though I'm in honor standing and I'm stating who I am, and I work harder than anyone I know.
Yeah, sure.
There are periods where I'm working like 90 hours a week, but I don't get paid because of what I do is not a value in this world, right? And not a dollar sign value. And so I can't help that. But what I can do is I can communicate that, you know, like I'm, and so with the unemployment, that's kind of like what I did. And so, you know, waiting a whole week to see what was going to happen today, this morning, but I stood in my own integrity, and I would have to it would keep coming up saying, well, maybe I should have, you know, configured that letter a little bit differently. And then I would be like, you know what, let go. If you don't get the money, you don't get the money, and you'll figure something out. But the good spirits and the creator will help you, right? It'll all just be fine, but you've got to let go. You've got to let go of trying to configure yourself, because that's part of that defending yourself against the system, which keeps it alive and it keeps powering it up, instead of withdrawing your power back to yourself and creating yourself as a unified field with no separation.
Well, I would go as far as to say they made a switch and bait. I could take like Scandinavia and Estonia last in Europe. Apart from the Canary Islands, the most ancient or Bronze Age populations were our forefathers keeping to customs land language. That's our way of things, and the only way, even the so-called tradesmen or nobility would actually not be allowed in the physical area. The physical area was the law, and in our language, that is equal to how we say team or us. So when we see us, we actually say law, and there could be the private, the actual center of a medicine wheel, or the wheel, or the yule. It would be, of course, you, but then there would be circles spinning out from it, like your family you came in with, and then you will go on to, from two different wheels, you will create the new family, you and the children from you will have a wife, your spouse, and then community of the families around you where you live, and it will go on for larger circles. But team is the actual literal translation of law in Swedish. So our forefathers, they tried for a long time, and the richest farmers or tradesmen in our region were in connection with the large world, even 2,000 years back and before. So
so there wasn't any bait and switch. The thing is that system didn't work. That system didn't work either. Otherwise, it would still be effective today. Well, and it wouldn't have been able to infiltrate. And I'll tell you one reason why.
No.
It wasn't a suitable situation for women.
No, I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about Sweden or Scandinavia.
No, but you're talking about how these things extended out in a community.
Well, good. And I will go back to to finish off my point with the switch and bait was when they pushed Christianity to be the new law. It took the place of an ancient system, our local law. And our local law would actually would be the same word as law. It
Right.
would almost be like a yule or a wheel, medicine wheel. Everything should be unbalanced, and the only ones allowed, the countryside providing for itself, like a country village, farmer village on the countryside, providing, they would actually have their own space defined as theirs, and you are in it. And if you're in it, you will be in it. You will follow law. You will be law together with everyone else. And the only ones allowed to adjust or to adjudicate conflict arising together in the team. And the Swedish word for law is the English literal word team. So only men of equal. That's the ancient law around the world. And I feel, as you portrayed how Christianity actually will take the symbolic unleavened bread and the wine symbolic of blood. I feel Christianity is part of like it's like the show off religion for the masses, and that's the switch
But
and bait
this
for
is
me.
what, right? This is the thing, is like, we get back into historical past and what that was, but if it was so good and it was so solid and it worked so well for people, then it wouldn't have been infiltrated by something else.
Well,
Good, bad, or indifferent. So this
good
is the thing,
point.
is women. So this is the other part that I have issues with common law, is that under common law, women are still not. We're still not free.
Well, you're not
women
free.
under
You
common
don't
law
count.
can be married off at 14 years of age. So when I look at like the religion infiltrating into, traditional areas, it had to do with the women, because the women
Yes.
didn't have security from the men and they were stuck. They got left. They did most of the work. They had to raise the children. They didn't really get a whole lot of assistance from the males, because the males were
Now we have
busy
to
out and
substantiate your
about
claim.
and
We
away
have to,
from, they
it's
were
good.
away from the
I
areas
follow.
quite a bit, on large hunts. But women did, like, I'm not trying to say good, bad, or indifferent, but women did a huge amount of work. And I could see how religion would be easy to infiltrate if the church started commanding that there'd be a marriage, that women would, under, religious law, be able
Now
to.
remember, all traditions, all cultures have had the institution of marriage. The Indians would have the same law, ritual, and that's interesting, because law should be ritual, ceremony. It will establish, it will strengthen people
So
partaking
if
of it,
we
and
look at
they
law
would take
now,
hand. They would take hand. The Indian tribes would do as we would do in our region. You would collect the village, the one that would become a couple by tradition law of the land or of the team. They would take hands in front of everyone, and that would be equal in the rock art. You would even
but
see
even in
a
native
symbolic bond
tribes,
between the legs.
men were allowed to take other wives, right? And
No,
under religious law,
no,
that couldn't
no.
happen. No, if say, for example, well, not take other wives, but say, for example, somebody's husband died, then, your household might be obligated to take in another woman and the children, and,
Well,
so there was just a lot of things. I think that this is why religion could infiltrate, because whether it gave it up or not,
good,
it's still
good.
infiltrated. But to this day, what do we call sovereign law, or common law? Man on the land. Well, women are not men.
Well, the
And then
definition
they try to
of the
put
word.
us in a category of the wombed man. So they
Well,
still, under that law, try to describe us as a man. We are not a man. We still don't fit in. We still do not have our own place within all the structures.
And remembering England as the basis of common law is the part of England had a sharing culture with Scandinavia, but the Roman Empire comes there as early as like 50 AD. They are there 40 AD. So the influence of the British Isles, or specifically England and Scotland, is much more bored into it. In our region,
Right. So
the
in common law, right?
traditions of family and law is much more well, and we have a situation compared to England, Scotland, in our part of the region, even more sparse resources. So we are not large, dense population, and there was not room for more wives in our tradition. There was room for order and structure and absolute teamwork to survive for the many, and you would find your own situation together with it. Right. The harsh climate of the winters, not only because you have to prepare for 7 months, you should provide for the livestock inside house and yourself on the 5 months of growing season you had. So right. There was a very, very strong traditions, and there are
right. And I'm just going to throw something out there because this is kind of another, difficult thing to swallow. But, having gone back and looking at history of like farming and agriculture, right? Because I went to school.
Great.
One of the things that really became apparent to me was that the reason why people would get married is, women, their families couldn't take care of them anymore, right? So they were basically selling them off to men. And men needed them to bear children so that you had a labor force on your farm.
Culture or your lands will need this too. There will be a large picture and there will be a small picture. Right. So the little like family structure in the circles going out, man or a country or a people, or they will not survive if we don't make families.
To this day, under common law, women are still property. And the only people that actually have power under common law are white male slave owners. That's how it's described. Right?
Well, and that would be anti-law in my view, and that's an interesting point. I would say that actually you and me, we tend to work in the world of the real or creation, and there is a system trying to push us away to believe we still have it, but we are merged into the destroyer's system.
We can't go back to past systems. We have to start
trying to figure out
right, what the modern way is going to look like, because to this day women are still not free, right? Women are still trying to find their way.
If you will say white slave owners, the slave owner per tradition would be a class of tradesmen that would use it as the basis of creating wealth around that.
Okay, but under common law, they're the only ones that are allowed to go to the court to petition anything or do anything in law. Even Anna had told me that it's going to be really hard for me to do a lot of the legal stuff, even in admiralty law, if I didn't have a father or a husband to take my paperwork into and file into the court, even now.
Take my word for it, because the actual law in my region where I come from will stem further back. But 1,000 years ago, when we were Christianized, that's what I will point to, a switch and bait position where they gradually built in the destruction, the deceiver system. Before, the all encompassing ruling power of a farmer village was only connected to the village and their area. No one else could even sit in their yearly grand meeting. That would be like a grand jury, or anything in conflict could only be settled between the council.
That's also how the original common law courts were too, whether they were only in that local area.
Now
but
I'm talking
there were
about
only certain
Scandinavia would not
people.
have common law.
Right.
Scandinavia would not have common law. Scandinavia would have ancient law. Ancient law is only men of equal of, or not men, like men means men and woman, means men and woman. We in a village, in a farmer's village, we decide our own matters. No one can put it above
So
us.
right. So nowadays we have to really kind of redefine a lot of that stuff because we're not going to be going
Great.
back to some of
I'm
those
not
things
trying to
because
do that.
right,
Great.
because women need, and I'm not saying this because, it's something that I've thought a lot about because I didn't have kids, I didn't get married. And
Yes.
and how do I navigate, legal systems, which
Mhm.
means I can't really be involved in common law because I don't have a male representative to actually help me to file the paperwork into the main court systems like it needs to
But
be.
you settled who you are, so you made it more strong. You actually went to the creation or to actual
Right.
reality.
But this is the other thing is that, women have to, start defining themselves as a different being that is separate from a man and not having any adherence to the word man. No woman, no, I'm a wombed man, like
Well,
no identification. Like we have to start moving out so that we can have other choices in our life. And I noticed this in the United States as well, that a lot of my friends, gave up having a dream of education or whatever else, because it was too hard for them in the system, in the United States system, because we don't have support in the United States system for you to be solo on your own. Now, if you, want to have a whole bunch of children from different men, the system will totally take care of you. You'll never work again. You'll have everything you
yeah.
want, right? But that's not a solution, right? That's more of an entrapment and a genocidal,
Well, genocide
generation of
will
entrapment.
break down society or a community. That's what genocide is. That's what it will break down.
Right,
So
but it's also generations become the genocide. So we
yeah,
have a genocidal generations of people that are on the welfare system that,
yes,
don't,
yes,
that's all they want to do is try to figure out how to compromise, how to do all these things so that they can get what they need because they don't know how to do it because their parents don't know who they are. So we need to
yeah,
just really remap the legal system individually and people figure out who they are and what your part is in this world, because
yeah. Take
not
that.
if, for example, there's this kind of crazy story that I tell that back in 2010 we're working with the common law group, and they were looking into buying land in different places and
Hmm.
creating a community and all this other stuff, and then
Hmm.
people could live on the community and do what they wanted to do. Well, I got into a huge battle with one of the guys because I didn't understand during that time that women can't do their own law. They can't file their own stuff under common
Oh, I'm
law
with
and all
you.
this other stuff. So this is how
Sure,
I found out.
sure.
So he says to me, so there's just stuff going on there. There's a few of them working on some legal paperwork, configuring, getting land, how this is all going to work out. They started moving towards creating their own passports as a sovereign nation,
Oh, yeah, sure.
driver's licenses, just a
Hmm.
lot of the stuff. So that we're
Hmm.
fully in the thick of it. And I
Hmm.
remember something came up, and I said, well, I want to be able to do my own paperwork. I want to be able to do my own legal stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
one of the guys said to me, well, you don't really need to. Once you're on the land and you just do what you want to do, you're going to grow food. What are you going to do? You're going to do your shamanism, whatever you're going to do, right? Because I'm coming on there as a single person, non-married.
Hmm.
And we'll take care of the legal stuff for you. And I was like, but then I don't have personal responsibility. Like I want to, if I incur
Sure,
something, I want to be able to resolve it, right? This is
sure,
what I
sure.
want to do. I want to have personal responsibility in all areas. And he said, well, it's just so not necessary. Plus, under common law, you're not entitled to be able to do that anyway. And I was like, excuse me? And then that's when I found out, and I flipped out. And that's when I backed away
Sure.
from common law initially, and also backed away from this whole community lifestyle
Sure.
of that, you know, you have these different groups in the community, like these are the law people, these are the farming people, these are the artist people, these are this people, and thinking, well, I don't want to live in a segregated community, because that's what it would be.
That's a new trap. Not very much different from the judge in his vessel, right?
Right. So the same thing is like being a woman and having to be married and have children on a community. I'm also now in a segregated group, right? I'm segregated. And so the thing is like, we just have to start allowing people to make their own decisions. That's why it's so important for you to figure out who you are and what you want from this life. Like, there's going to be people that are going to say, well, I just want to be married and I just want to have kids, and they want to give up any kind of sovereignness to their husband and their community because they just want to have kids and get married. And now that's a problem too, because now you're not being a full unified being. You're not, you're surrendering a part of your sovereignty to somebody else to make your decisions. And so then you're under their understanding. You're under your husband's understanding instead of your own understanding. So, you know, there's a lot of things that we have to like figure out about not only ourselves. First, it starts with us in the center of our medicine wheel, our figuring out who we are, coming into alignment and balance with that. And then we can start the footsteps of moving out from our wheel in a balanced way into the community, into the, you know, what else is out there, into the we, and trying to help that assimilation happen.
Well, wouldn't it be the next level to do the same kind of, we have to start to find out who are we, and
but they have to go back to the I. So there is
and that's those have to come in first. Those have to come in first, and then
this is the other thing is we can't talk about the we, because we don't know who I am. So we have cannot be building community. We cannot be having any discussions about the we as a whole, because the work
that would be the next level to find much people enough to start to their own, they find themselves, and then it will be the we have to be formed in the more enlightened, or in the more.
But you know, if we talk about Rudolf Steiner, he said that part won't happen until after 3572. So right now we're in the I, we're in the freedom, we're in the thinking, the critical thinking period, the epoch, and so this won't end until 3572.
Well,
so
we still have
and he
to
calls
create
it the individualism period, because you have to be able to think, and people can't think. So this is where kind of like we're at is, you know, staying in your own wheelhouse and working on your own stuff till you can figure out, you know, what that means and who you are. And so that's kind of like, you know, the conversation is about, is like, you know, we're stepping out into these legal standings and doing paperwork that somebody else developed that we haven't even read. You know, like if I give somebody a paperwork, they trust me and they'll just sign it. And it's like, well, did you read it? Maybe you should just read it first before you sign it. But they want something to be resolved that they don't want to deal with, which is a problem. It's more of I don't want. The more I don't want, the more I don't want you're going to get, because that's the law of attraction that rules this world. Right? So just, you know, want people to kind of think about a lot of this stuff kind of in a, you know, in a platform that I just don't think people think about. And I don't think that people in the practices of law, even all the alternative laws, have really thought about, what that imprint is, and that we might not all go together. I mean, those people that haven't even started down this line of thinking may be the ones who end up overall destroying the planet and making it uninhabitable. Mm-hmm. And part of that process is them finding out who they are through having to go through the process of allowing others to make decisions about who they are. So, all we can do is really focus in on what's, in my medicine wheel. I'm in the center. I have my relationship with my creator. And how do I resonate that out? What kind of frequency goes out? What kind of thing that am I conjuring into matter that matters, not only to myself, but others? And that's about all we can do, is to just, keep the focus back on ourselves. And mostly I just don't want people to, be licking the envelope of this really hateful legal notice or whatever else, and then sending it into the mail. And then it's traveling through all these people's hands that have to touch all that negative energy and that hate, when it's so unnecessary that you just need to define who you are. And then you can create the word. You can create the word that you want to stand on, your own understanding, and how you're going to relate that to what else is out there in the matter. And maybe through that point, you actually change the physical matter.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
I mean, that's just kind of like stuff I think about. And so I just kind of wanted to have kind of a conversation about that, because I feel like this is not a conversation that a lot of people have dealing with a lot of this legal stuff. It's always in defense. Mm-hmm. We're defending ourselves against, instead of, obviously if I'm defending myself, I don't know who I am.
Yeah, well, good point. Good point.
Because obviously they could be right? That there's something wrong with me, or that I'm doing something wrong, and that's why I'm defending myself.
Or you're partaking of their system. They put it in front of you, so that's kind of awesome.
I am partaking in their system. Mm-hmm. No matter if I have a job, if I'm buying land, if I'm in a community on land, if I'm using the hospitals, I'm in their system. Mm-hmm. Regardless if I like that or not. And so how do I decide that I'm going to participate in that system? And that all comes back to, who am I? That will define how I operate and participate in their system.
Yes.
And it may be difficult, because, you may be throwing, like I've done in the past, throwing paperwork at their door. Or, like, what is that game where you throw the thingy and you try to hit the bullseye? I mean, that's what sometimes a lot of the legal paperwork is like, because you don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And you don't really know what you're going to cause them to come at you with. You could make your situation much worse. But if I know who I am, and then I create my paperwork or my letters or my notices or whatever else that I do, my agreements and my contracts based on who I am, then I can sort it out and create my own honor standing legal framework and platform in which to operate from.
Well, in a way, if we always will say we partake in their system, because anyone that goes into the room of someone else's creation or game, he will be like, someone designed that system. So in a way, the old saying, well, if you join the game, you will probably accept the pain or something. We have a saying in Swedish that, well, the one that joins the game has to follow the rules of the game. And that's, well, did you design the game? No, if you did not, you are like dependent of what someone else created, and most likely they will create something that's beneficial more for others, and you will probably help the energy of the system.
That's a false belief system. That's imprinting of sayings and statements that are like old wives' tale to get you to believe something in a certain way, instead
There
of
can
you
be
going,
some truth
I
to it.
can enter the game at any point. Okay, so you have a medicine wheel.
Mm-hmm.
You can enter that medicine wheel at several different points.
Sure.
You can exit that medicine wheel at several different
Sure,
points.
sure, sure, sure.
So how could there be, a game that, you have to participate on a certain level? Obviously, you would have to say that's mind control. It's some kind of mind control.
Good point. Good point. But I would say there is actually two teams. There is one team that is prone for deception and to fool you, and they will create a game and they will control the rules and lure you into it. But actually, a medicine wheel should be the combined wisdom of like forever
Okay,
generations
so let's
back.
go back to this whole deceiver thing and that they're luring you in. If you
Well,
weren't stupid and
well,
you didn't know who you were,
well,
they're
listen
not
back to
luring
my.
you. You think that you're going to get something.
Well,
That's what it
probably,
is. You think
sure.
you wouldn't go into that system or participate in it if you didn't think you were going to get something,
Well,
or that you needed something from it.
I'm trying to come back to the aspects of my forefathers. They kept traditions and value systems as the treasure, as the absolute
I'm not
most
saying
valuable,
I'm not
like
saying that
like a
there
wheel,
isn't.
like a
I'm not,
wheel of the culture. This would be their package. That's the like forefathers, and we built this together, and we're in here,
okay,
and
but that's
no one else
right.
came there to try to put it on the side and say, "Well, here's the same thing and use it, but we will take care of it." So that's actually what the Roman Church do. They say, we will take care of things for you. Skip your traditions and values and language. Even you have to start to obey the rules of like these administrators, what
Okay,
they
so
put
this
for
is the
you.
thing, is like I grew up in the United States with no culture,
Well, yeah.
right?
So
Because
I can
a
understand you from that
product,
point.
right? I was a product of society. I am so glad that a couple years ago I would have felt like totally different. But I'm so glad that I wasn't raised in a particular culture with a particular belief system, because I would not be able to define who I am, because my past, my genetics, none of that has ever been before me would ever help me to identify who I am, because who I am has nothing to do with anything on this planet.
Well, then that could raise some difficult questions.
It
If
could.
nothing of this planet, because the atoms building our body and filling the energy systems, running us with intelligence and just marvel or wonder of how the
So
creation can work.
the past causes problems. It causes justification.
Well,
And so,
the past would not succeed to bring us here if it was not also a tradition of values or wisdom that would fit to survive with. Because how will we get to the future without wisdom of well, that could be like this. We experience it now, like someone tries to manage all the world and decide for us. Well, why? With the life brought us here. If society would break down today, groups of men and women would start immediately to build up a system to survive from and collect from the absolute essential wisdom to survive. Or you would look at the certain destruction of well, that's who
we
is in
are
us.
in this certain
We
destruction
have our
of all of that.
heritage, and like the important persons came to your life, these shamanic leaders or traditional from the peoples of
Okay, so let's get this correct. A shamanic people are ostracized from their tribe.
Yeah, you told
They
me
are
that.
isolated and stand on their own for the most part. But let me just get back to something.
Mm-hmm.
It will always go back to everything is falling apart right now. And it's kind of interesting because I had a conversation with a cop who deals with the homeless people on the river, because here we have the highest rate of homeless people living on the river in areas in the whole population, or the whole United States per capita.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things is that he said that they've tried. They have set aside all this, welfare housing for the homeless people because the population is so bad that they get them off the river, the women, the children, or whatever. They offer them a place to live, right? They have a place for them to go to immediately. Mm-hmm. They put together all the services that they can get clothes, they can get some welfare, they can get food stamps, they can start getting on their feet. There's even like educational opportunities. And he said that if the people are alone and by themselves, they can get them to take the services and get off the street, because it's a really hard life. It's a super hard life on the women, and it's a super hard life on the children, because the children are being raped, they're being beaten, right? There's just a lot of things that are happening to them because the men kind of rule these more kind of enclaves. He said that there's one enclave that they've been studying on the river. They call it the Rabbit Hole. Okay. And he said that these people are like genetic engineers. He said, do you know that they've created like running water, like gravity fed running water into their little housing things that they've built along the river. They have like all kinds of and they have a system. He said the problem is that there's one guy that rules it all over 75 people, because they have to have, these people can't think on their own. And so they gravitate towards somebody who is going to be in charge and make the rules. And there have even been people that have been shot because they've been asked to leave the community because they're not fitting in and doing what the main leader wants. And so they've even been shot, and they've also been beaten to leave the community because they're not doing what the dictator wants. So I had a whole conversation about him, because they've had to bring in like a whole bunch of psychiatrists and to understand kind of like on the lower end, when things fall apart, what is going on inherently with society. And what it does is it becomes a dictator, whoever the stronger male is, to defeat, be able to fight off, to make the rules. And that these establishments are not good for women and children. But because they end up being told what to do, they get up in the morning and the dictator says, you go do this, you go do that, you go get us fresh water, you go do this, you do this, you're in charge of this. They thrive in that environment, so much so that they don't really care if they're getting regular showers. They don't really even care if they're eating. They don't really care that they have a roof over their head. They don't really care what happens to them.
Well, that's not eternal wisdom.
But I'm just saying that is never coming back. That internal that types of society is never coming back. We have to start thinking about what we're going to do.
It's still present in the culture. It's still present in
the U.S. We don't have any culture. We're so mixed from all the different cultures that there isn't really a culture that exists anymore.
That's a centralized project from schooling, 200 years of schooling and television.
Okay, but it gives us an opportunity to figure out who we are. If we didn't have this presenting ourselves, we wouldn't actually start to have and even Steiner talks about this in his work. In the past, we felt, we didn't think, right? It was more of a feeling. There wasn't actually the ability to think, because the human hadn't evolved enough to think. This is why we're in the position that we're in now, is because we're in the period of the thinking period, which started in 1410 in the epoch. So
sure.
As we're going along, not that people are waking up, but some people are actually starting to develop a mind to be able to think. But this is part of the human evolution and development. So we have to stop looking at the past, because that's not going to work in the future, right? And we also have to stop thinking that doing things that were like the past are actually going to help what's going on now, when that's not what's going to happen. And that we really have to individually start thinking about who we are and what we want our life to be like, and start moving towards that in a balanced way to become that, right? That's what's going to change things. So the culture in the United States is totally broken down. And even, Native people live on reservations that have nothing. And they've been so isolated, and so things that have happened to them, but it's because they didn't really understand other cultures as well, and those other cultures were, maybe more dominating cultures. But now that they have figured out kind of like what's going on, they can figure out who they are and how they want to participate, like moving forward. So I think that, when we're dealing with law, we just have to deal with things in a whole kind of different way that's not really attached to, what's happened, what's infiltrated. There's this really kind of cool saying that says, and I don't know exactly how to say it, but,
Okay.
for a long period of time, I thought, well, that's just wrong. But now I get it in my life, because I wouldn't be who I am if people saved me.
Sure.
I can only be who I am if people leave me in my own pity party on the side of the road, and I have to clean it up myself. So the quote was something like, basically, who's doing the best thing for you? Is it the person that sees you in a pile of shit and reaches in and pulls you out of your pile of shit? Or is it the person that sees you in your pile of shit and goes, no, I'm going to leave you in your pile of shit because you're not ready to get out of your pile of shit?
Well, you will come. Well, you will talk. Well, that's a good question. Of course,
it's the deceiver, if you want to call it, that has put you in a pile of shit and is leaving you in a pile of shit for you to pull yourself out of the pile of shit yourself. And that's it. I mean, so the thing is like, we have to really start.
Okay, well, I'm with you.
Defending ourselves and the deceivers, and I get all that.
Well,
but the key is that we have to like stop looking at them like that, and looking at them as an opportunity for the growth, the human evolution growth. And
well,
what am I going to do with it now? And getting away from the bad guy, the good guy, because that's going to determine how I'm going to deal with things legally. When there are a lot of people who work for these people that are good people too. And what are they going to get caught in the fodder that I'm throwing, which is, like then I'm doing harm on them as well. So we have to get away from this whole like belief system and blame system and defense system and separatism, these systems of separatism and belief system. And we have to identify who we are so that we can move forward in these systems and get away from, they deceived, they did this, they did that. Well, not everybody involved did that, because there are a lot of people who are involved.
I will make a parallel with biology to define what would be a deceiver and what I would be if you would like to hear it, because deceivers should be a correct way to pinpoint something that wants to parasitize you, that just wants things from you, deceive you, but he will not cooperate or partake in things that will benefit you. So that's kind of
okay,
implicit in thinking about it. You would be, if I would be with my kind, and we would have our ways to survive in nature, a deceiver would be another organism or interspecies parasitism to feed off, but actually there's you have a very good, your long presentation from the beginning here was actually like the two sides of actually matter and spirit, or like physical and energy, or the other worlds we don't see. So all those things are connected in a way. So I'm
right.
I'm
So the
quite
thing
impressed.
is the parasite only gets in when the being is weak, right? So if you're malnutrition and you're eating a bad diet and you get a disease, that isn't the disease's fault. That's your fault for allowing your body to break down in a way where it could actually be overtaken by a different thing. So that would be your fault. So when you don't know who you are, you're allowing all these other things to infiltrate.
And I would just shortly brush on biology a little bit more, because if a biologist would survey, would investigate how is the structure of nature, he would actually figure out quite fast that more or less 80% of all organisms are parasites, and in some ways we will be parasites on farming, even.
But it has to be in balance, right? So example, even mycelium, which is the root structure of mushroom, is considered parasitic because it moves into and it takes over everything. But when it's working in a good system,
there will be parasitic mycelium, and there will be symbiotic mycelium.
No, it's the same thing. And I know this from my native friends in Canada, because they have a lot of, untilled soil and forest land that they govern.
Sure.
And what's happening is that there's this drought going on in part of Canada where there's the forest, and the mycelium that was normally beneficial under the land now has turned parasitic because there isn't enough water for it to live and the trees to live. And so they're noticing that the mycelium is actually draining the trees of all the water and killing them because it has a choice. So before it's beneficial, now things have changed, and now it's becoming parasitic, and it's taking the forest down.
This we have to account for. If you wish, we can talk more about it, but we already talked long. We have to think about all the chemicals they spray around. They pollute the environment with heavy metals and other things.
We are doing it because we are allowing it to happen because we don't know who we are.
Well, sure. I will not argue that. I will agree, but we should also come to grips with who we are to start to do different.
Well, that's the key. So we have to let go of blame of what's being done around us. We have to figure out who we are.
But we could not say that mycelium becomes parasite because we didn't figure out who we are, because there is like a parasitism will its mechanism will have only the function to survive himself. So if an organism does not realize he is infested of parasites, he will help the destruction of the only thing that produces something even for the parasite, and the parasite will not care about it, because he will only focus how to get things to survive and to multiply himself.
Okay, but that's pretty much all humans on Earth right now.
Well, and if you
we could say that all humans right now are parasitic because we're all involved with the destruction of the planet, which is not beneficial for human evolution and human life.
We will find it out if too many stop to create, and I will have in my heart the passion and the feeling for we need to create, we need to develop, we need to provide and supply.
I need to, not we.
Sure, but
I need to
I
create.
alone will not survive without other. In the biology of us is a social unit of 150 persons, a quite optimal unit to cooperate. We are a flock animal to
Okay, but the
survive.
thing is
We are not.
if you can't do it, you can't help other people to do it.
Good, great point. That's actually the start of it, sure. And I will feel actually encouraged a lot of your storyline for today. It encourages me to go much more directly to this, what you describe, like who am I, and to find it out or fill it in. I should fill it in.
Right.
I should
And
take
this
the
is,
space.
so just a last thought for people. Every time we're going to, they're doing this or they're doing that, then we have to turn the question, we have to turn a question onto ourselves. Well, then what am I doing knowing this information? What am I directly doing about it? Am I still waiting for other people to create a community? And this is the other place that I got to. Even if I got together with a community of people that were like-minded and we go buy land and we're off the grid, as the landscape of the planet is destroyed, eventually that destruction is going to come to our community.
Yes.
So we're not going to be able to get away from it. So we have to stop thinking about, a lot of us, that when we wake up, we have this whole community mindset. Well, we'll just start a community and we'll do this and blah, blah, blah. And we'll isolate ourselves from it.
No, we should not isolate ourselves.
And the thing is that's not going to work either. What has to change is me.
Good.
And how I'm thinking about it. And what do I do? How do I change around my old belief systems of I don't want, I don't like, to I want, I like. So when we're in this place where we keep talking about the we, we're not talking about the I, right? We're not using our power correctly because we don't even know what I want from my life. So how is there any way that I'm going to make any kind of impact or difference on the solid matter? Because I can't configure the transmutational frequency vibration into a whole heartfelt vibration that emanates from me to change physical matter. And that requires every word that I think, every word that I say, and how I manage myself as I walk around. And is that difficult? So difficult. But if I raise my voice, I'm in a heated debate, reading somebody else's inventory, I start blaming, I'm in the I don't want and the I don't like, and I'm in a place of defense. So I'm feeding it more. And what I need to do when I find myself in those exchanges, right? Because what I'm saying to the universe is I believe that this is real because I'm fighting against it, right? I'm fighting it. I'm fighting against it. And what I need to do is I need to change it to, okay, well, I know that I don't like this situation because I just found myself, fighting with somebody else, even yelling. So what do I need to do to change this from a I don't like and I don't want to I do want? This is what I do want, and I'm going in this direction. Because I'm creating harm. I'm involved in the slaughter, the maiming, the violence, and the harm. And if I'm in a situation where I'm trying to change somebody else, I need to leave that situation completely 100% and allow them to have the beliefs and feelings and thoughts that they want to have until they can elevate their thinking enough to figure their way out. And it's not my job to save them. It's not my job to dominate them. It's not my job to tell them what to do or how they should do it, right? And that's where we have to get out of this defense, and even with legal stuff of reading, reading the, fine print on stuff. Hey, can I read that before I sign it? And reading it, and then you can say, well, I really wanted that, I really needed that business license so that I could do business in their system. And then, so I just signed it. And then, 5 years down the road, they say, oh, I want your income tax, this and this, this and this and this. And we get angry. How dare they? Well, we're participating in their system when we could have said, wow, I don't really like the fine print. I don't really like what I just signed. I'm not going to sign that. No matter how bad I want to do business in their system, how much I need a business license, how much I need this or whatever, I'm going to walk away from this business license and I'm going to figure out a different way that's more suitable for me because I know who I am and I'm not going to participate at that level. So I'm going to redefine it, create something new, which happens because I know who I am. So then I devise a plan. Okay, well, what kind of, other systems are out there? Maybe I can develop my own paperwork and license my own self. Did you know that we have a guy named Rand Paul that is in our Congress? Do you know
Sure.
how brilliant that guy is? So he went to college to become an ophthalmologist, right? Deal with the eyes, right? Surgery and all that other stuff. Well, his dad, Ron Paul, was a doctor as well.
Sure.
And so Rand, this is before he ever was in Congress. Well, he didn't really like the medical board. He didn't really like all the legal stuff that they make you sign, the oath that you need to have to be a doctor. He didn't really want to participate with any of that stuff. He wasn't going to do any harm in his practice anyway, right? So what did he do? He created his own board. And he would license other people who were like-minded, who were medical people that wanted to do no harm, so that they didn't have to take oaths of office that they were not going to be beneficial for them and for the public that they worked on. So he literally licensed his own self, made his own board, and licensed his own self through his own board. Right? And nobody has ever said anything about it. They've never even brought it out publicly. You know why? Because if other doctors found out that he did this, they would all do it.
Sure.
So this is what I'm saying, is that you have to figure out who you are in order to figure out that what you're not going to participate in and how to reconfigure that and change physical matter. Because it matters. Matter matters.
Well, and
if we defend ourselves against it and fight against it and rail against it, whoever it is that we're doing it with, then it only blows it up. It only feeds it. It only makes it more solid and more real. And so it all starts with me and myself. And it's probably like another reason that I've never been married is that I'm not going to be under somebody else's understanding. And I'm not going to have to negotiate with somebody else about my life. I do not want to have to go to my partner, if I decide I need a break and maybe I want to go to India and I want to study with this person for 6 months. I don't want to be in a relationship or a marriage where I have a 30-year mortgage, I have a white picket fence, I have kids, and then I have to go to my partner and I have to negotiate for me to go for 6 months, because you know what? They're not going to let me. They're not going to take on the whole household. They're not going to want to pay all the bills by themselves. They're not going to want to take care of the kids, create all the meals, clean the house, do all the other stuff that they're going to have to do while I'm gone. And there's another problem. At the end of it, I may choose not to come back home. I may choose to go and do something else. So we have to kind of start redefining, and I'm not saying that there aren't some people that aren't going to want marriage and kids and all this other stuff, but in order for us to redefine and change matter, I have to matter in my life. I have to do things that matter to me. I have to learn things that matter to me. I'm not a a piece that can be copy pasted out, even if that's what my community expects from me, what I've been designed to do. I was raised in that culture. This is what we do. We have to like start defining something else. You know, we have to just start defining who we are, who am I, and then I can go about imprinting the world in the way that I need to imprint it step by step by step. And it's not an easy thing to do because nobody's really done this before, right? If people have already been doing this, then we would have pathways, you know, accurate, viable pathways to follow. And we don't. Because nobody's legal paperwork really works, because at some point or another, people get in trouble with it. People have to defend it. You know, it's one thing if you live on land and you get all the stuff that you need from land and you don't need money. You know, it's one thing to, you know, eradicate yourself 100% from the system. But when you're living in a city and you have kids and those kids need to be fed, right? And you have to rely on the system for a job, that type of legal stuff isn't going to work for you because it hasn't been tested in the public. And so you use it and you ostracate yourself from it. And then you get to an age where you want that retirement that you worked all those years for, and now you don't get it because you removed yourself from the system. So we have to like start balancing ourselves out. Get right? And we're the creators of our own reality. Not we have to create, I have to create. Right?
Well, would be difficult for we to do it, but
I.
It's easier for me to do it, of course.
Right. If you're a vessel and you're an empty vessel, you know, there isn't going to be anything that can kind of run out or resonate out into the world. You don't have any frequency because you're not filled. Now, if you fill yourself up as a vessel and you're a strong, firm vessel that's filled completely, then anything else that comes out rolls out from the vessel out into the world. And so there is no converting people. There is no telling people what to do or how to do it. The energy just rolls out into the world, right? That's emanation.
Sure.
That's what emanating is. So instead of fighting and defending, it's just about us coming back to ourselves, figure out who you are. And you know what? It's a tough question. Who am I? And what do I want to be? Who do I want to be? Where do I want to go with that? Do you know how many people don't know what they want to be like in their future other than just surviving?
Well, most will.
What do you want to be in your future?
Well, I have my path partly with 2 children. I want to be part of well, I will have I'm part of this creation of my children, and I want to benefit them, and I want to benefit me being strong to support them, of course. And I want to. I'm a wholehearted inside me. I love creation, and one of the places I do it, I will.
Okay, so that's a generalized.
I have to be in music and create and
right. So I'm going to put you on the spot because that's a generalization. You just stated something that, you know, a typical person that's a father should say, and you left out the whole part.
That's actually sure. You can do your point, but that's actually part of me.
Right. It should be of everybody, but you left out the part of how you're going to take care of them and benefit them.
Well, I'm trying to do it now from building my own platform and to have from it to share with it, you know, and also actually the mental part. I'm cut away from my daughter, so I cannot. I can what I can do about my daughter is to mentally in the energy or vibration world send my love and my connection to her, and I know inside she has the connection for me. But in the physical world, I'm cut away from it, and I can hardly do too much about it. But my son,
so
my son, we have a very
is
strong mental
that,
connection. And
so,
actually, I could mention just short, because I find things that I do actually is rooted in things my father did. So if realizing this, to correct myself, I will offer to talk about this to my son, to make him realize that he actually maybe do some things that's more or less not a welcome backpack from someone else, or maybe many generations that did things that was not actually beneficial for my father or me in some senses. And if I realize it and recognize it, I will start to act with it, like coming closer.
So if we really know who we are, we wouldn't have to go through all of that stuff and those details. It would just be, right? So there's the doing or the being, right? And we spend a lot of time in the doing. So the other thing too is that because of the energy, that when we don't know who we are, say with your daughter, you're not resonating a certain kind of frequency to be able to bring her closer to you, right? Because there's still this conflict that's unresolved inside of us, right? So when we figure out who we are, the energy can clear up a lot of those kinds of things. The other thing too is that I will not send people energy because I don't want to contaminate their path. For example, I'm homeless, right? Because of the path that I've chose, right? I work a lot, I do a lot of stuff, but I'm still in my creation process. So I don't really have the right to tell somebody else how to live, or how to get a job, or how to make money, or present them with what I feel that they should be doing or how they should be doing it. I should keep that energy to myself until I can figure out who I am. And then the vibration of who I am changes the matter, the structure around me. But going to the past, which is the future, and bebopping all over the place, we end up contaminating more of it with the old and the future and stuff that really doesn't matter, which will get these people to turn in a certain way after they've thought a lot about it, right? And reconfigure it probably in an unhealthy way, because they're going to try to overbalance, which means that their cheese is going to slide off their cracker because of what they don't like about the situation, or what they don't like about us, right? Because we can't prove to them that our way is such a great way, because you know what? From the outside world, it doesn't look good. You're in conflict with the people that you live with, like me, I'm homeless, so out to the outside world that matters. I don't really look like I should be, telling people, how to relate, or how to live, or how to do, any of these other things. So all I can do is just force myself into myself, right? More and more and more, and just work on my stuff. Hold on. Anyway, I'm going to end the recording, and then hold on 1 second. Okay, hold on. I will. Okay, hold on 1 second. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye.